Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Comment Section. The weather is cloudy,
Yes.
but it was sunny a little bit ago. And if I would be wearing sunglasses, I would be wearing sunglasses right now because my future is looking bright.
Oh, yeah.
And now that weather report is out of the way, this is going to be a special episode of Comment Section to honor the life and recent passing of one of cinema and television's greatest visionaries, David Lynch.
That's right.
So similar to previous Comment Section tributes we've done, like those to Stan Lee and Kevin Conroy, I'd like to go over David Lynch's career from the beginning, and give my thoughts on each of those steps in that long and wonderful and bizarre and surreal career. Now, for me, David Lynch, I would say in recent years has become what I would say is my favorite director of all time, which is why I am uh, doing this and why I wanted to make a comment section episode.
Oh,
That
yeah.
said, I think you've probably only seen one thing he's done, and it's
Yes. You
yeah.
know what? I think I'm going to say what I think it would have wanted me to say. I
Mhm.
have not seen a proper David Lynch movie.
Yeah.
I've not seen one he would want me to see. But
Yes.
yes, for me, this is going to be like traveling through what was the Eraser Man 77? So about a 40 some year career I'm going to experience
Yeah.
within this episode. I did
Yes.
watch a few trailers ahead of time.
Oh, cool.
Not gonna lie, some of them I did not know what was going on.
Oh, you got the full experience then.
Yes.
You got the full experience because guess what? Most of those, when you watch the whole movie, you would feel the same way.
Oh, okay.
Because we can start from the beginning now. I mean, he is considered kind of cinema's most major surrealist filmmaker. David Lynch, born in 1946 in Missoula, Montana, on January 20th. And throughout his early life, his family moved many places. It seems like a lot of moving around: Idaho, Washington, Virginia, North Carolina, more. And so David Lynch had this upbringing that he says was good. I think a lot of people would watch his stuff and go like, "You must have had a messed up childhood." And he talked very highly of his parents and said he had a happy childhood, where he was given room to be creative, and his mother supported his art.
No, it's the
And
happiest childhoods where you come up with the most dark stuff.
that's exactly right. You have some time to be creative. And so yeah, there's this full breadth of the experience of American cities that I think is felt throughout all of his works. Um uh like the contrast between like the Pacific Northwest and his time in Philadelphia. You see a lot of inspiration from Los Angeles and Hollywood in his works. The Midwest. Um, but yeah, we especially start to feel the influence of cities in his works in the Philadelphia and Los Angeles of it all, because he attended the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts in Philly, which is where he would direct his first film, Eraserhead. So, um, uh, uh, yeah, but before we get into Eraserhead, I will go over some of his pre-cinema works. He was
Oh,
first and
okay.
foremost a painter. And I think this is an important aspect. In this presentation here, I have one of his paintings when he was quite young, and he kind of did some surrealist paintings, and he did that throughout his whole life. And he there's a story that he would often tell about him sort of suddenly realizing when he was like painting that he wanted the painting to move, and that was like the impetus to some of his early short films that he did before Eraserhead, which was with these short films and uh, even in many of the feature length films in his career that follow this. Um, I like to think of this background that he had as a surrealist painter and think of these many works of cinema kind of like a surrealist painting come to life, rather than thinking of it as like a concrete narrative story that requires being understood to be enjoyed. Like in an abstract or surrealist painting, it is often the feeling that it gives you that matters, not the
Yeah.
specifics of what you're looking at or what the painter was trying to depict. The point is not to explain something or explain a story, but rather to make the audience feel something. And that is apparent in his entire career, but some of his early short films were things like Six Figures Getting Sick Six Times, which I think was his first one. I'm not sure, but
Sounds almost Dr. Seuss like.
yeah, the left hand picture is that. And there's one called The Alphabet, The Grandmother, The Amputee, and yeah, plus some other short films before Eraserhead. So before we get into his first film, Eraserhead, that kickstarted a major cinema and television career, I will get into my first exposure of David Lynch. So I sort of peripherally knew about David Lynch for a really long time. Um, Interestingly, like when I was pretty young, I saw parts of, if not all of, The Elephant Man, which is one of his more straightforward films, nominated for 8 Academy Awards. So one of his biggest films, because my dad that's like one of his favorite movies, and so he would show me parts of it, and I kind of wonder if part of the reason I was so young and he showed me parts of that movie might have been like, I mean, it's kind of a movie about like not judging people for their deformities and like not being cruel to people because they look different than you. So even though it's kind of like a weird movie to show a child, I think that might have been the point.
What is that
Um,
rated? Is that I
Probably
thought it was
not.
PG when
Yeah,
I saw the trailer.
yeah, it's PG. Probably it's not. It would actually be one of the films I would say like if anyone's worried about any of the films being too weird or too unsettling, The Elephant Man is a good place to start for David Lynch films. Um, but yeah, obviously at the time I didn't know who the director was. Like I wasn't that big of a nerd at like 7 years old or something. So it was later when I started hearing. I think one of the things that made me peripherally aware of him was a lot of the stuff I liked. People would say was inspired by David Lynch, and David Lynch was also a director that people would reference that like people who are weird like kind of like, and it was always sort of like I should really check out his stuff someday because it kind of seems like the ideal thing for me because I like surreal stuff. I mean, even like early on in like art education in my life, surrealist art was like my favorite type of art. I loved the feelings that that kind of stuff gave me. And so it was always like something that I kept putting off that like someday I want to watch a David Lynch movie. I really wanted to watch Eraserhead because I knew that as like his body horror movie, the most explicitly like a horror movie of his movies.
It's
And
also the
then
original.
yes, and I also wanted to watch the Twin Peaks. I had heard so many people talk about how wonderful and weird that show is, and um, when I finally did go, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna watch something David Lynch. It was Twin Peaks in 2017, so not that long ago. This isn't like a I mean, obviously, I had that little bit of experience in my childhood, but this isn't like a Stanley or Kevin Conroy where it was like
Yeah.
from your childhood type of a thing. This is like a more recent uh thing that it feels like it's not so recent to me because of how important his work has become to me. And I would even potentially call Twin Peaks my favorite show. Certainly my favorite, like, non sitcom show, basically.
I feel like you brought it up in like the first year comment section, the
Yeah.
revival.
Yep. And that was a pure coincidence, by the way. I started watching it, Twin Peaks, in maybe April or May of 2017. And when I was done with the original run, I saw that the third season return was coming out like in a couple weeks. It was like a weird coincidence that I didn't know about until I was done with the series.
Like, what? There's more? Yes.
Which is truly like ideal because everyone
Yes.
else had to wait 25 years. But yes,
Some people are just like, you young punk, you're so lucky.
yes. Um, so that will bring us to his first movie, Eraserhead, 1977. So, um, Eraserhead, one thing I think is interesting is that, so David Lynch has 10 movies, and even 10 movies, and of course, Twin Peaks, the show. But he has 10 movies that he has directed. And I think it's interesting that I feel that the first and the last one are like the most just David Lynch with no restraints doing the most David Lynch thing, like just he possibly could. The most bizarre things he's ever done are the first and the last thing he did, and in
It's
terms of
full
movies.
circle then.
Yes, it is. Um, So this was a movie that, like I said, he was first and foremost a painter, a maker of surrealist short films. He was studying art in Philadelphia, and it was in this time in Philadelphia, I think about 5 years went by where he was trying to make this feature-length movie happen. It wasn't until 1977 that it finally did, but he had this script that had very little dialogue. No one was funding it, and uh eventually somehow he got enough funding to make it happen, but it was not a kind of film that was easy to sell. So these 5 long years trying to make this happen in Philly gave this movie a weird industrial feeling theme. This film is very noted and considered very a lot of big cinema fans laud this movie very highly for its soundscape. It has this very industrial, ambient sounding soundscape that permeates throughout the whole movie and kind of makes this feel, in addition to it being like a surrealist body horror, kind of an industrial horror. Um, and Eraserhead is, I mean, one thing about David Lynch is, yes, his movies are surrealist. Yes, it's almost a joke that people come out of many of his movies not understanding what just happened. But honestly, like, I think what people get confused about is often the plot or like what happened. But I think that the thematic and symbolic parts of his movies are actually quite straightforward. I would feel very surprised if someone didn't walk out of Eraserhead going, "Wow, this was a guy really afraid of fatherhood." And
Oh,
being this is a movie about the anxiety of new fatherhood. Um, the almost um the horrors of taking care of a newborn, the horrors of being like young and uncertain with what comes next and what this means, and even the horrors of the fact that many lives start out um with so much strife, so I think the most famous thing about this movie that people reference is the Eraserhead baby, which is what it has been come to be known as. There was I think, very cool practical effect of this very strange looking baby that he is feeding right there. And the baby, people have said it kind of looks like a cow fetus or something. In fact, I believe that because this movie was kind of like a cult classic, people thought of it as like this depraved, weird movie. There was even rumors for a long time that, oh, did you know that twisted person used an actual real cow fetus in that movie? It wasn't true. It was just a good practical effect. But um, I mean, this is a movie really not very long. I think it might be under 90 minutes. That follows uh the main character played by Jack Nance. Jack Nance, this is the first, obviously, first collaboration with Jack Nance that David Lynch had, but Jack Nance is a person we will see a lot throughout this because David Lynch, like many directors, um, collaborated with the same actors and editors and producers and stuff a lot. And I will be pointing out when there is like a first brush with this person as a collaboration. So Jack Nance is one of those people with his famous, really high up hair in this iconic movie poster for Eraserhead. It is basically, like many of his movies, feels like you have somehow fallen asleep and have found yourself in a nightmare, and you wake up and you realize, wow, I must have some problems with the idea of bringing life into this world. And I think it is a wonderful film that has inspired so many. And with all of these, well, with some of these, I wanted to show some clips to kind of bring some context to people who don't know about a lot of this stuff. So the first one here, I thought I wanted to show this with Eraserhead. I didn't want to. Some of these I'll show a clip from the movie. Some of these I'll show David Lynch's thoughts or something. I
Oh,
just
okay.
wanted to simply show this clip from the archives, a video of people walking out of the theater after seeing Eraserhead for the first
Oh,
time.
okay.
And I think it's really funny.
Yeah, I got to think about it for a while.
So before I give you a comment? Did you?
Oh, I thought it was the ultimate suspense thriller. I kept waiting for something to happen, and it never did.
Oh,
Very entertaining. Very lively film.
yeah.
Gosh, it was the best thing I've seen all year.
Doesn't sound sincere.
Some inane, bizarre person with a disturbed mind wrote that film, and I did not enjoy it.
I enjoyed it very much. My kind of movie.
Eraserhead is a unique motion picture experience. I recommend it to everyone.
I liked it. I've seen it 5 times.
It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
It was very good acting, but I've seen it 8 times, and that's about enough. This time I interpret it as a nightmare, this time. I thought there were other meanings, but now I'm not sure, really. I compare it to early Fellini, but I like Fellini better.
The most intense thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
I thought it was an intelligently made, compelling nightmare about the repressed sexuality of Henry Spencer. That was his name, right? Henry Spencer. And I liked it.
I just thought that was really great because sometimes seeing people's negative reactions is sometimes what sells me on something.
Yes. I
So
think I saw Variety gave it a negative review because I was looking up when
Yeah.
I would watch a trailer, I would look up the kind of the review reaction. I think I saw Variety gave it a negative review.
oh, interesting. Yeah, there are many of these that like people like Roger Ebert and stuff gave negative reviews to as well. I don't know about Eraserhead, but yeah, these are not for everyone. But let's talk about how it is for me, because I wanted to have some fun and do a tier list.
Oh, okay.
So here we have a classic. If anyone's ever seen a tier list on YouTube or something,
Yeah.
with different tiers, sometimes they're called like S tier, A tier, B tier, and F tier, sort of grading it.
Yeah.
But I've called these this bottom tier here is called Dune, and I don't know why that's called that. That's interesting. Maybe it'll be explained later. And then we've got the tier called a classic for anyone, a classic for weirdos, an all-time classic, a beautiful nightmare, and then the top tier, my favorite things David Lynch has ever done, a dream.
Oh, before you keep going, I do have a question to ask.
Yeah.
Did you ever see because when I was looking stuff up about him today, did you ever see the sitcom he did? What was it?
I know
Airtime or something?
On the Air.
Yeah.
So he did On the Air with Mark Frost, I believe, and then there was also a couple episodes of Hotel Room, but I have not seen those.
In the preview I watched, it references the dead girl from Twin Peaks.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Now I do have to watch that. Interesting. But anyway, so Eraserhead, you know, I'll probably have only a couple of things that are differ from other people's tier lists. There are a couple on here that I like a lot more than other people. Obviously, Eraserhead, I think a lot of people's opinions about Eraserhead is that it's an extremely formative movie that inspired a lot of people and almost invented a genre, this like surrealist body horror type of thing. There's so many movies since then that people can say like, oh, that was like clearly took a lot from Eraserhead. But while it has that influence, I think some people are like, but it's also kind of maybe it just is what it is, and it doesn't really go as far as some of his other things. But I think that for what it does there, that it actually deserves to be almost near the top in A Beautiful Nightmare. I think that he came out of the gate swinging with a statement all his own. I'm a big fan of movies and pieces of art where it just feels like you are seeing into an individual's mind. It is their own creation. It is their own vision. And that's part of the beauty of art, is experiencing the thoughts of other people.
Yeah.
And Eraserhead is such a distinctly unique statement that I have to put it as one of my favorite things that David Lynch has ever done. Moving on from there, Eraserhead, while not extremely successful, it did find some success as what I guess people called a midnight movie, where it would run at like midnight showings and maybe like weird people would go see them. And it started to actually find some success there. The interesting thing about so Mel Brooks, the famous, I guess mostly kind of like, I think he did Blazing Saddles, is it? Very famous Hollywood figure, Mel Brooks.
I know him from when he appeared in season 4 of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, yes. He was trying to produce a movie based on the story of the Elephant Man, based on a couple of works that are about this story, this real story from the past. Particularly, there was a sort of a famous British doctor. I want to say it's Frederick Treves, I think. He is one of the main characters, depicted as one of the main characters in this movie. But he's from like the 1800s, early 1900s, and he wrote a memoir that included his time with the Elephant Man. And so this movie that Mel Brooks was trying to produce was adapting this story, this really amazing story, about someone that was known as the Elephant Man, whose real name was Joseph Merrick. And Joseph Merrick was a man from the late 1800s, and he was born with an extraordinarily rare condition that hasn't been able to be 100% confirmed what it is, but the condition caused his bones to grow in excess, essentially. The result was a very highly, by society standards, deformed appearance. The real Joseph Merrick is pictured in the bottom left here. I thought I'd add that in, juxtaposed to the John Hurt playing him up above. And Joseph Merrick was born with extreme deformities that got worse as he aged. And of course, because people are horrible, he lived at first an absolutely dreadfully horrible life where he was taken in by the circus and paraded around in freak shows and abused and treated horribly and couldn't go out in public. And the Elephant Man is the real story is that this doctor went to this freak show and basically took Joseph Merrick to the hospital to sort of work there. And at first, sure, there might have been some ulterior motives to study what is up with him, but he also, I think, believed, at least this is how it's depicted in the movie, that he could try and give him a much better life than in the freak show, and try and turn Joseph Merrick's life around. So anyway, Mel Brooks was trying to adapt to this story, and I think someone suggested to him David Lynch. I think it's an interesting story. Like, how did Mel Brooks, of all people, decide to have David Lynch, of all people, direct his Elephant Man movie?
Yeah.
The most remarkable thing about Eraserhead for me is that out of it, Mel Brooks offered you Elephant Man, and George Lucas allegedly offered you Return of the Jedi.
Wow.
Well,
true.
one thing came first. Mel Brooks, and that's another whole story, but Mel Brooks, I don't know how this beautiful thing happened, but I'm forever thankful to Mel. He took a chance on me based on what he saw in Eraserhead.
No, you can ask
And
me
then
another
here's
two
Mel
questions.
Brooks.
If they're brief, yes.
If they're brief. Okay, well, I spent an hour with David Lynch in January.
You did?
Yeah, interviewing him.
Was his button, was he
It
wearing?
was, of course it was. White shirt,
Closed,
up to here,
white
black-
shirt,
black-
button?
black jacket.
Black jacket.
Incredibly nice man. Of course, we talked about the Elephant Man, and of course, you came up.
Yes? Nobody knows that I produced the Elephant Man.
Well, this is your chance
Yes.
to tell us what it was you saw in Eraserhead that you wanted to give him the Elephant Man.
You know what I saw? And that's a very good question, Stuart. What I saw in Eraserhead was symbolism that was not murky, symbolism that was clear. That baby was a monster. It took over the... I saw everything he wanted to say, surrealistically and symbolically, he said very brilliantly, very clearly. And I said, this guy will be a great filmmaker. And I'm going to grab him first, and he's going to direct this script, The Elephant Man. And he came in, he helped rewrite it, he helped on the makeup, and he helped on the beautiful black and white, photography. David Lynch is a bit of a genius. He really is.
So yeah, that's Mel Brooks on what he, and I think that David Lynch in some other interview, funnily said to see if he was going to be chosen to direct The Elephant Man, that Mel Brooks was going to go see Eraserhead, and then David Lynch was like, "Well, I guess I'm out. I'm out of the running. There's no way that that's gonna work." But somehow, Mel.
Are you
Brooks
sure you don't
really,
want to watch it after you hire
Yeah,
me?
exactly. It's nice knowing you.
Would you not
But
like
he
to see
liked
my paintings instead?
Yeah. But luckily he did see something in Eraserhead, and I think that David Lynch directed a movie worthy of its accolades. It's amazing that he went from Eraserhead, just something that lived only as a midnight movie for weirdos, and then directed a movie that was, yes, and nominated for 8 Academy Awards, which was tied for the most nominations that year. It didn't win any, which seems like a travesty, but hey, it was recognized with 8 nominations.
I mean, look, with the Oscars, as we're about to see this year, you're really competing, and
Yeah,
only one can win.
exactly. I also saw, and I thought I'd point this out, that there was a list, AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movie Quotes, where considered one of the best movie quotes of all time is one of the climactic moments of this movie where Joseph Merrick shouts, "I am not an animal. I am a human being. I am a man." And it is a beautiful story. Like I said, saw bits of this when I was much younger. I only, I guess, rewatched it more recently. I think expecting that, I like David Lynch because it's a weird thriller kind of and like mystery stuff. Like, I don't know if this more straightforward nominated for 8 Academy Awards is going to be I can acknowledge it as good, but I don't know if it's going to be for me. I actually found it remarkably beautiful. And that's why for the tier list, I'm going to put it in an all-time classic. Because I couldn't imagine anyone telling this story better. And both with the depicting the seriousness of the wretched abuse and mistreatment that he faced, but also depicting the platonic relationship that develops, very heartfelt relationship between him and this doctor played by Anthony Hopkins. And the symbolism, of course, as Mel Brooks saw that he would be able to effectively do symbolism. And yeah, the result is an incredibly, incredibly beautiful movie, and definitely one of the best things he's done as well. Which brings us
Yeah,
to
real quick, I will say of all the trailers I saw of his movies, I think I got up to the mid 90s.
Yeah.
This of the movies, this is the one I think I'd want to see the most.
I think you should. I think it would be the one I would maybe most recommend. Like this feels like, I know it probably is, but like this should be shown in all film courses. Like this is like this is required reading in the way that something I don't know, The Great Gatsby or something, like it is like a required watching kind of film for cinema history, and I think deservedly so. After this success, I think that David Lynch started to be really looked at for oh, you're a big successful director now, let's try and put you on some other big stuff. Like obviously he apparently had been offered to direct Return of the Jedi. I think he turned it down. One thing he did accept instead was attempting to direct Frank Herbert's Dune.
Oh God.
And so this was the last Lynch movie that I saw. I saved it to the end because it's infamously not that good for most people. I was hoping that I would be one of the defenders and oh, actually, it's very good. I'm getting ahead
real
of
quick.
myself,
Let me take a drink real quick, because if you say that you love this movie, I might do a legit spit take.
No.
Here we go.
So
proceed.
And another thing I'll mention about Dune is that I've never read the book Dune, and I've never seen the newer Dunes, either Part 1 or Part 2. This was my first experience with the Dune, and there might be a lot of Dune fans out there that are like, what? You can't comment on it then. You can't. I have to say, watching this, I cannot imagine how this story could be adapted well. I really, part of me was like, I can see some David Lynch, a little teeny bit of David Lynch in here, and I appreciate the weirdness, but I don't see what's there currently. And I will be fair that the average person would not like this and like the new ones. That seems to be a consensus. So I'm gonna give the new ones a chance. But yes, that said, I think, obviously, at some point after this, David Lynch turned down Return of the Jedi, and based on a clip I'm going to show, I think that he made a decision after this point of his career to respond differently and not say yes to everything, to choose carefully what he does, that he has a good amount of creative control over what he does here. I also want to point out before I play this clip that one of his, if not his biggest collaborator actor, Kyle MacLachlan, basically discovered in this movie. Luckily, he still had a career after this.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that Kyle MacLachlan was found out of that, because in this entire bubble, Kyle MacLachlan is one of my favorite people. And we'll be talking about a lot more about him.
I saw a bunch of the trailers I saw. I was like, man, he is in a lot of these.
He really is. And so then I didn't want to say too much more about this movie, but I do want to just show another David Lynch interview quote on Dune.
Can I ask you why you consider Dune a disappointment?
Dune, I didn't have Final Cut on. It's the only film I've made that I didn't have. I didn't technically have Final Cut on The Elephant Man, but Mel Brooks gave it to me. And on Dune, I started selling out even in the script phase, knowing I didn't have Final Cut, and I sold out. So it was a slow dying the death and a terrible, terrible experience.
Do you regret making it?
Yes, except it just nailed this idea: never, ever do a film without Final Cut. And why would I have done it? I don't know how it happened. I trusted that it would work out, but it was very naive and the wrong move.
I mean, it's got a lot of fans.
There's some things about it, but overall, it was squeezed, because in those days, the maximum length they figured I could have is 2 hours and 17 minutes, and that's what the film is. So they wouldn't lose a screening a day. And so it's, again, money talking and not for the film at all. And so it was compacted, and it hurt it. It hurt it.
So
you definitely feel it compacted with how much exposition there was, or the weird narration of the person talking to the camera.
Yeah. And again, this being the only Dune thing that I've experienced, it's very hard to say, but my feeling about it was, and I'll use this as the opportunity to go to the tier list section of this. There was a part of me that thought it feels like I'm watching the third movie in a trilogy. That I'm suddenly dropped into not even the middle of the story, but the end of a story, and it's just how am I to care about any of these characters? I can't even. I'm so dropped in the middle of I'm like a deer in headlights. Whoa, what is going on? We're already, so much is going on, and and I'm sure that studio limitations massively limited what you could explain, and I like when movies are allowed to be as long as they need to be, because it gives it time to breathe. It makes it feel like it's not this rushed thing after thing after thing, and you can kind of sit with feelings a little bit more. But I don't know. I don't even know that if you would have made it a whole trilogy that it would have worked. It just doesn't even seem that's why I'm shocked that they only needed 2 movies for the new ones. It just doesn't seem I'm sure it's an 800-page book, and then I'm okay, that makes sense. I can understand how an 800-page book, how this would work.
They also made it into a TV season.
That's right. I'm very curious if any of this will work for me. What I have to say about David Lynch's Dune, He's my favorite director of all time. I love him to death, but it is going in the Dune tier. It is I would say, the only movie of his that I would say is below a middle rating. Like, for example, to just kind of like, I would say Eraserhead's maybe like a 9 out of 10. Elephant Man's probably like an 8.5 out of 10, and Dune is probably like a 3 out of 10, I would say. But look, there, I will say there was a moment in the last maybe 30 minutes that for a second I almost thought it was going to start working. It didn't, but I thought for a second that it almost did.
What part was that?
I think it was when they were. I kind of liked the concept of the thumper and how they had to walk to a particular rhythm to not wake the worm.
Oh yeah.
Like, I thought that seems cool, and then it was like, okay, but I still don't care. It didn't work.
Walk like crabs.
Yeah.
You know what the nice thing is when you look at this list. Yeah, as someone who's seen Dune, I don't blame David Lynch for it.
Mhm.
I blame Frank Hubert
for bringing this thing into the world.
For what I consider one of the worst tales ever conceived by mankind. And you know what? You know what I heard from people who love Dune? You know, it's a series of 6 books.
Yeah, there's a lot.
They say each book gets progressively worse.
Oh,
I'm just like,
yeah,
how? But like you've raised my curiosity to maybe check out the summaries on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
because how bad can it get when people who love this story that I think is awful are just like, it gets worse.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? And I again, I'm curious how this translates to the other mediums, but you know what it really felt like to me is the boring parts of the prequels.
Yes,
it was that the
100%.
whole time. It was a whole movie of just like the Senate.
Yes.
That's all it was.
Yes. If you're going to compare it to Star Wars, the prequels make so much sense.
Yes.
It's like the Trade Federation, like this. You replace Trade Federation with the spices and stuff.
Yeah. And the thing, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like, it's the boring parts. It doesn't have like the fire planet fight. It doesn't have Darth Maul. Like,
they have
like
one little fight at the end.
Yeah.
And that's it.
He fights Sting.
Yes, with an itty. I think he has an itty bitty knife.
It's like a dagger. I don't exactly know, but
to quote Deadpool, baby knife.
Yes. All right. So I think there was a lesson had there, and only 2 years later, he would come out with a movie that really is a different direction. That is for sure. It's a movie called Blue Velvet. Kyle MacLachlan returns again. This is from 1986. Also, first collaboration with Laura Dern, who would go on to become a very big movie star. And we will see a lot more of Laura Dern in David Lynch's works as well. So Blue Velvet is, I think, kind of David Lynch taking some of that control back. We saw those comments about Dune and how he regretted it. I think he was like, I don't want to regret a movie again, and I don't think he ever did. There's something he regretted about Twin Peaks that I'll get into, but Blue Velvet feels like he's trying to really tell his own story again. It's a neo-noir mystery thriller. And this is many people's favorite David Lynch film. It has a very particular vibe that is distinct to its own, that has like a very noir kind of feeling thing. It has amazing symbolism, which the clip I'm going to show is just kind of getting into that symbolism. And I was shocked at how like, this is not a horror movie by any means. It's just kind of a noir mystery thriller kind of a thing. But boy, is this violent and just generally explicit, like just very rated R. Don't show your kids this movie. In fact, don't show any of your kids any of these movies except for maybe, The Elephant Man, if you got a weird little kid who's going to like David Lynch in the future.
Is this a
So-
movie you feel comfortable watching on a plane where other people can see your
Not
screen?
even slightly. Maybe one of the worst movies to do that with. So this is a movie about essentially Kyle MacLachlan's character finds a severed ear out
wow.
just out and kind of goes to the police and being like, oh, I think there's a murder, and he ends up trying to solve the murder himself. And I will get into this clip now because I think that Blue Velvet is has some really strong theming and symbolism. Is kind of a through line in many of David Lynch's works. I talked about the influence of many different cities, how he had these experiences in the Pacific Northwest, in parts of the South, in the Midwest, and in California and Philadelphia. And one of the major themes here is like, this is 1986. It's Reagan's America. People are pretending sort of that everything's great now and everyone gets along. There's sort of this idealized version of America. I kind of saw this in like the 50s as well, that there's sort of this idea of America as this like place where everyone can be whatever they want and is mowing the lawn and waving at their neighbor, and they have a white picket fence and a family and a dog, and but there's something lurking underneath, and like that is the end, sort of the essence of the phrase Lynchian, which this is of course a director iconic enough to have his own phrase like Kafkaesque or something. When something is Lynchian, it is the sort of surreal and horrific juxtaposed with the mundane. And I think the opening of Blue Velvet is truly one of the most amazing things about it. It just kind of sets up like all of the themes of this movie are just right here, where you see beautiful suburban America. And the song Blue Velvet plays. Here's this happy, just kind of neighbors out in the yard, watering the plants.
Utopia.
That's right. He has a heart attack.
Really, what's the baby gonna do? And the dog is happy. The dog doesn't care.
Yeah. And this is kind of the scene to me. The beautiful green grass slowly zooming in. The grass representing like the beautiful of suburban America. But when you zoom in and look closer, what's lurking underneath suburban America? It's not actually that beautiful. There's actually disgusting bugs and dirt underneath and rot and decay. And that is the scene that sets the scene for Blue Velvet. Like those character, like none of that is relevant to the rest of the movie. It just sets up the theming of the rest of the movie, and I love that. And we start getting into this mystery, and there's also many extremely creepy villains, like this man down here who huffs some kind of gas and acts crazy. Boy, is that a bad man. That's all I can say about that. So that is Blue Velvet, and like I said, a lot of people's favorite.
Is William Dafoe in this one, or is that one of the other ones?
That is Wild at Heart.
Okay.
So Blue Velvet. I mean, I really love it as well, but maybe not as much as other people. I'm gonna put it in a classic for weirdos.
Oh,
because it is a movie that super isn't for everyone. Maybe didn't get like the most critical success or anything, but it's sort of like a classic for some. Including
whenever I open a streaming service, I do see it, a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is like, if anyone's looking for just like a palate cleanser, like a mystery, like this is way more intense than you're expecting. Not in a way of like a horror movie, but it's just really intense. But I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's showing the dirt underneath the suburban life. It's showing the reality, and for that, it's quite good. So next is the biggest and my favorite section of the entire thing. My start for David Lynch. That is right. We are on to 1990, which is when Twin Peaks started its run.
Oh, yes.
Could kind of be, the thing that David Lynch is most known for overall. This entire show, technically from beginning to end, did run before I was born. But what I have heard about it is that somehow, bizarrely, despite how surreal and unconventional this show really is, it kind of became a national phenomenon, like a sort of a water cooler show where people were wanting to like talk about like, oh, did you see what happened last night on Twin Peaks, kind of a movie, kind of a show. And Twin Peaks is the story of a small town. Everything that I mentioned in Blue Velvet about like the surface level perfect little small town, the dark dirt rot underneath. That's Twin Peaks to a T, because it's this quaint little town in the Pacific Northwest in Washington called Twin Peaks. And one day, what washes up on shore other than the dead body wrapped in plastic of Laura Palmer, a high schooler? This shakes Twin Peaks. There aren't murders in Twin Peaks. That's unheard of. And so this small police station in the sheriff, Harry Truman, yes, like the president, but not the president, different guy. The sheriff, Harry Truman, is kind of like, how do we deal with this? And this is unheard of, that a murder happens in our quaint little small town of Twin Peaks. It turns out over the course of the series that there is that darkness lurking underneath the surface. One thing I'm going to show a few little clips from Twin Peaks because it is my favorite David Lynch thing. And part of it is because I think that there are, for this original run, kind of three aspects. There is one, the surreal and kind of horrifying aspects, which I think when I talk to people a lot, when I talk to people a lot of the time, I think people are like, David Lynch, he does like horror or something, right? And I'm like, not really. Like, he's not a horror director. Like, that's not it. It's not really it. He's just not really afraid to, zoom the camera in down towards the grass into the darkness a little. Like, it's not horror. And I think that like, because like, sure, there's this small part of Twin Peaks that has this surrealist horror aspect that for maybe one scene per episode or even per 3 episodes, you might start to see some of this darkness. But for the most part, as far as the original run, it's really a quite endearing, funny, charming little show about a quaint little small town with lovable characters. And it is kind of, in a way, like a parody on to some extent of soap operas, where the idea of being like, you start to care about the characters so deeply, and then kind of everything becomes drama, and the drama is like so melodramatic and like just like, how could you do this to me, like with dramatic music playing, just this like seeping in melodrama, like this sort of thing where if someone is overly ironic and like it can't be too sincere, like it might be just like too much, like it's like just these such melodramatic teenagers like dealing with these troubles. And I mean, that's soap opera, and sometimes it's sort of like funny because you can tell that they're poking at a certain sort of soap opera trope. Other times you do just care about the characters, and I think that's wonderful. One of the most beloved characters in all of television, though, is Agent Dale Cooper, of course, played by Kyle MacLachlan. I think the pilot episode of Twin Peaks is one of the greatest things ever. I think it's the greatest episode of the entire show, probably. I know it sounds weird. Like, it's not that the show gets like worse from there, but it's just like
it didn't peak with the pilot. It just sets up everything so good.
Yes, and it's also that I think that they didn't fully know whether or not it was going to be a full show, and so they wanted to kind of be able to fall back on maybe it's a movie. And so the pilot, I want to say, is like an hour and a half, 2 hours long or something. It is basically a movie.
Oh, wow.
And so I would honestly say, like, and I think it's standalone enough. It doesn't answer the questions, but that's not really the point of the show. Where I would say, like, I know I mentioned The Elephant Man is a good place to start. I truly think people should just put on the first episode of Twin Peaks, and I would be shocked if you don't want to watch episode 2. But just on its own, it is one of the greatest like episodes of television, in my opinion. A long portion of the beginning of the show doesn't even introduce who would probably be considered the main character. But then, like, maybe 30 minutes in or something, an FBI agent starts driving towards the town of Twin Peaks. And it's because, of course, there's a murder. And I think something happened where, like, there might have been some crossing of state lines. And so the FBI needs to get involved. And so that's where our main character, FBI agent Dale Cooper, comes in with one of the most iconic opening sequences of a character, him driving towards Twin Peaks right here.
Diane, 11:30 a.m., February 24th. Entering the town of Twin Peaks. 5 miles south of the Canadian border, 12 miles west of the state line. Never seen so many trees in my life. W.C. Fields would say, I'd rather be here than Philadelphia. 54 degrees on a slightly overcast day. Weatherman said rain. You get paid that kind of money for being wrong 60% of the time. You'd be working. Mileage is 79,345. Gauge is on reserve. Riding on fumes here. I got to tank up when I get into town. Remind me to tell you how much that is. Lunch was $6.31 at the Lamplighter Inn. That's on Highway 2 near Lewis Fork. That was tuna fish sandwich on whole wheat, slice of cherry pie, and a cup of coffee. Damn good food. Diane, if you ever get up this way, that cherry pie is worth a stop. Okay. Looks like I'll be meeting up with the Sheriff Harry S. Truman. Shouldn't be too hard to remember that. I'm going to be at the Calhoun Memorial Hospital. If we're going to go up to intensive care and take a look at that girl that crawled down the railroad tracks off the mountain. When we finish here, I'll be checking into a motel. I'm sure the sheriff will be able to recommend a clean place, reasonably priced. That's what I need. Clean place, reasonably priced. Oh, Diane,
And there's Twin Peaks.
Oh, there it is.
And thus begins what I think is one of the greatest shows of all time. And look, it's really like a sort of soap opera mystery about, in some sense, about solving the murder of Laura Palmer. But David Lynch would sort of reveal that he never really intended to solve the mystery. That wasn't the point. It was just sort of like a jumping off point to explore this town and explore the characters. But ultimately, it's a mystery with some fun characters, are really charming. I like, one of the reasons why I think Dale Cooper is so great is that in many of these sort of mystery stories, there's a kind of a trope of a detective being like a hardened guy who's like, this job is unforgiving. I don't care about any of you.
At the end of every episode, he opens the liquor cabinet of scotch and pours it back and thinks, God, I wish I was dead.
Yeah, and this is almost like a deliberate reversal of that. I'll play this clip next because this is a clip where Dale Cooper sort of gives what is my entire life philosophy now. This him talking to Sheriff Truman in the Double R Diner, and with some great advice.
Thanks for the reminder, Sheriff. Stop in any time. Any people to the change, Cooper? I don't.
Oh, afternoon, guys. We'd like some coffee.
Afternoon, Shelley, yes.
We should be on our way.
Harry, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Every day, once a day, give yourself a present. Don't plan it, don't wait for it, just let it happen. It could be a new shirt at the men's store, a cat nap in your office chair, or 2 cups of good, hot, black coffee. Like this.
A present. Like Christmas.
Oh, man, that hits the spot. Nothing like
And that's his life advice to once a day buy yourself a treat.
Yeah.
And I think that encapsulates one of the vibes of the show. The other I'll play here is one of the most iconic things that people always sort of, if there's one thing they know about Twin Peaks, it's about the bizarre, surrealist Red Room sequences, wherein in typically it seems at first the detective agent Cooper's dreams, he gets little hints about the case that are very like cryptic symbols in his dreams, and it sort of becomes this other character, this other setting in the show. Unlike other mystery shows that are grounded, this one is not so grounded, and as the show progresses it gets less and less so, but this is the iconic Red Room. Where the victim, Laura Palmer, talks to him in his dreams. And he dances. And that's the Red Room that we see periodically. And
also, it's a recurring thing.
Yes, every time this recurs, I would get very excited. Like, oh, are there clues in here that I'm going to be able to make out? Probably not. But I mean, the vibes, the jazzy music. And like I said, this is one of the iconic parts of this that gets referenced in other things like this.
That's damn fine coffee you got here in Twin Peaks, and damn good cherry pie.
Brilliant. I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Still. And my favorite thing, and I almost lost my mind when I saw this in The Simpsons Who Killed Mr. Burns episode, which is when Wiggums is trying to solve the case, and he takes a little snooze.
Not close. Boy, this is going to be an all-night brainbuster. Better drink some coffee. We're out of coffee. Well, I'll just drink this warm cream.
So that's where that's from.
Yeah. And everyone in the Red Room talks backwards, kind of. It's sort of like and it's done sort of practically. The actors speak the line backwards, and it is actually reversed. So it's kind of a hard thing for the actors to do.
Oh wow.
Huh? I'm not following you. Huh?
Look at Burns' suit! Yeesh!
I had an idea, Chief. Why don't we check out that suit Burns was wearing when he got shot?
Did you have the same backwards talking dream with the flaming cards?
Oh.
So yes, as I mentioned, this has gone on to be one of my favorite shows. Season 1, incredible from beginning to end. Not a single thing to complain about, and one of the greatest things he's ever done. Season 2 has a reputation for like falling way downhill. There's one point where the mystery is essentially solved, and it's sort of like David Lynch never wanted the mystery to be solved because it wasn't the point. It wasn't just another murder mystery where the point is to solve it and then everyone's satisfied. It was to explore the town. And the studio basically was like, you have to solve it. You have to. And basically then David Lynch decided, if I am going to have to do this, I'm going to do it my way, and then I'm gone. So I think about episode 9 of season 2 is the murder being solved, which I do think, I know it's like not the way he wanted the show to go, but I do think it's wonderful and one of the best episodes of the entire show. It is very satisfying. Then there is the period of the show, the last part of season 2, where David Lynch is no longer involved in the show. A lot of people point to this as like when the show got bad. Like there's lots of really bizarre storylines. I actually avoided watching those episodes for a while. Like I was
really
scared of it being bad. And when I finally did watch them, my thought was like, these aren't that bad. Like there are a couple weird storylines. But ultimately I really did just feel like I'm so happy to still be in this world. And gosh, I wish I could confirm this for sure. I think Mark Frost was still involved. This is a collaboration with Mark Frost. Mark Frost, I think I did a disservice by not mentioning him earlier. I think he doesn't get enough credit for being like an equal part of Twin Peaks. And
luckily you did put him on the graphic with Mark Frost.
I did that to remind myself and look at it. But so Mark Frost kind of came up with the idea as well and like brought in David Lynch. I think there was like a similar case that happened to him and where he grew up. And it sort of he came up with this idea of Twin Peaks. If I'm not mistaken, I think that it is essentially Mark Frost's idea and world. He even wrote a couple of like lore books about it. But it's sort of like his world and David Lynch's vision is kind of how it feels, because obviously a lot of the style is very David Lynch, but the world is very Mark Frost and the characters. And he may have still been involved at this point when David Lynch was not involved. After the point where David Lynch was not involved anymore, I can see where like some of the surrealist elements felt like kind of a shell of themselves. Like it didn't quite have David Lynch's influence. And there was sort of this like, what do we do with the show now that this is solved? And it took a little while. There might have been a few weird episodes, but then they like introduced a new villain, and I think it got really good again at that point. But I ultimately think the entire show is absolutely fantastic. There are a couple weird storylines, like with James, and like when the character Nadine, who is an adult, decides to go back to high school, and it's just like a weird plot. But like ultimately, it's fun. It's just fun. It doesn't have to be that serious. It's at that point of the show, it's a fun soap opera. That's also cool. However, David Lynch came back. He came back for the last episode. They were like, "We're gonna wrap this show up," and David Lynch was like, "Okay, if you're gonna do that, then I want back in." And at the time series finale, it of course came back, but the series finale of the original run of Twin Peaks is pure art. If I were the only episode that competes with the pilot as being the best episode of the entire series, would be the finale. It is almost entirely Red Room based. It is an absolute just nuts thriller of an episode. My God. And then when it ends, I'm like, I am so thankful that I didn't have to wait. Because it and it that the series basically ends on a cliffhanger. Warning. But now that it's
on purpose.
Yes, now that it's 2025, you guys don't have to worry about that. If you're like, oh, I don't want to watch Twin Peaks if it ends on a cliffhanger. It doesn't. It completely ends now, but it just took 25 years. But yes, season 2, amazing. And this is where I'm going to go back to the tier list, and season 1, I'm going to put In a Dream.
Oh yeah.
One of the best things he's ever done. Season 2, I am going to put a little bit lower in A Beautiful Nightmare, but still one of the best things he's ever done. I just kind of wanted to separate it a little bit.
Yeah.
To really hone, like, it's not even a diss at Twin Peaks. It's in like the highest tier.
Yeah.
It's just, I want to highlight how amazing season 1 is. I really want to just single that out. Okay. Next. And I believe that this next film I'm going to talk about came out in 1990. So it actually, David Lynch at one point was working on Twin Peaks and
very
this
busy.
movie. Yes. And that other movie is Wild at Heart, starring Nicolas Cage, Laura Dern, and Willem Dafoe, from 1990. And I personally like this. I think that this is a weird one in his catalog. It is some good fun, but it is I guess it's an unconventional movie in a way that I would not say about, like, all of these are unconventional movies. This one's unconventional in a different way. We see Laura Dern return, and then this is the one time that he worked with Nicolas Cage, and I think the one time he worked with Willem Dafoe as well. It is the story of a man named Sailor, which is Nicolas Cage's character, and he just like gets out of prison essentially and reconnects with his girlfriend, Laura Dern's character, and they kind of go on a road trip. And everything about this movie is filled with excitement and absolute depravity and trashiness, and it is I mean, it's insane. It's like, it has the charm that I personally think a lot of Nicolas Cage movies do, if you can like stomach him at his craziest. But I found it to be a somewhat endearing movie with a couple of heart-wrenching moments, but ultimately like a fun, thrilling, wacky experience. So I'm gonna play just a clip that I just think is like bizarre. Which it shows the, I started that. This clip isn't bizarre. This clip is innocuous, but it shows how this movie has a way of turning something innocuous into something bizarre because of how weird and trashy this movie is. And it contains a recurring running joke throughout this movie that I loved about Nicolas Cage's character's Sailor's snakeskin leather jacket.
Peanuts! Hey, baby! Oh, wow.
Baby, I got a surprise for you.
Hey, my snakeskin jacket! Thanks, baby! Did I ever tell you that this here jacket represents a symbol of my individuality and my belief in personal freedom?
About 50,000 times. I got us a room at the Cape Pier, and guess what? Power Man's playing at the Hurricane.
Stab it and steer.
His snakeskin jacket represents his belief in individuality and personal freedom.
There you go.
How beautiful.
Got me right here.
So that's Wild at Heart. It actually,
I really like that one poster, like the drawing.
Yeah, I found some of these. I don't know that that's even official. I just thought that was really cool. I think that this was based on a book, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Called Wild at Heart. So Wild at Heart. I am going to put this in a classic for weirdos. It is among, I would say, lower overall for me, because there's a big part of me watching this that was going, I think this isn't a good movie. Like I can't tell, but I felt very endeared by it, and it was a lot of fun. So it was a good movie. Why limit ourselves to that? And I do also want to mention that Willem Dafoe's character in this is so unbelievably disgusting and terrifying. He has these nubby little teeth that are like look all rotted, and what an absolute dirtbag. I mean, just insane how much of a dirtbag one can be. That's acting.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to go back to Twin Peaks.
Oh, okay.
In 1992, we got a Twin Peaks movie. This was a highly, highly anticipated movie because of, with what the phenomenon that was Twin Peaks. And, but the thing is, David Lynch is not a person of fan service. He has no interest in that, as far as I can tell. He wants to tell the story the way he wants to tell it. He wants to tell what he wants to tell. That he wants to express the themes that he wants to express and the symbols he wants to symbolize, and so the result is not the Twin Peaks movie that anyone was expecting, because I think what audiences would have wanted was that shows like the series finale just happened and it ended on a cliffhanger. We're gonna get more of that, right? And like we're gonna explore more of these things that were happening at the end of season 2, and you're gonna explain what the Red Room is, and you're gonna explain. And David Lynch does not care about explaining. That's not the point. So what we got with Fire Walk with Me is not explaining really anything. Instead, we are seeing the last days of Laura Palmer before she was killed. A lot of people's reaction to this was like, we already know who killed her. Like, this isn't revealing anything. But what it does do is force the audience into the shoes of this woman who we've basically only been seeing like memorial pictures of throughout the series because she's dead, and going like, this is who this show is about, and like this is how the town treated her before this happened. This is the emotions that she was going through when this happened. And it is doing that same thing of zooming in on the bright green grass into the dirt. And I think a lot of people were so endeared by Twin Peaks, rightfully so, that they thought we were going to get more green grass and get these fun characters again. Instead, Fire Walk with Me is all the dirt under the grass. It is it is a way, 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 way darker tone than the series of Twin Peaks, which again is like a mostly fun soap opera mystery kind of thing with some horrific parts. Fire Walk with Me is quite dark. Towards the beginning, we do get some of the fun characters. We do see Agent Dale Cooper again. I'm going to show a clip from one of those earlier parts in the movie.
Is he in it a lot or
not much at all? Which is why another reason why people were upset.
Yeah, because it came out like a year after the show ended, right?
Yeah.
So they probably would have been filming at about the same time.
Yeah, and I mean it feels very at the same time, but he's Dale Cooper's in the first quarter of it, maybe. And then after that, it's all about Laura Palmer in her final days. And that's what the movie is mainly about. And I had heard all this context that I had just said, where there are a lot of Twin Peaks fans that maybe just didn't think that this is what they wanted from Twin Peaks. Once I watched this, I love to keep adding to the list. I think the best things in Twin Peaks are the pilot, the series finale of season 2, and Fire Walk with Me. Those are the best things in the entire series. Even though the tone is way different, I love the darkness of this. I love how real and forcing us to focus on Laura Palmer it is. And I think if you consider it in the category of a psychological thriller like Silence of the Lambs or something like that, then this is like an incredible psychological thriller movie about the last hectic, horrible days of this girl's life. And there's an incredible sadness and darkness, and Cheryl Lee, who plays Laura Palmer, should have absolutely had a bigger career than she did after. Like, I mean, this performance is incredible. And so I think that this is a beautiful and horrific movie. And the scene I to show of this is maybe not that representative of like the overall tone of this movie, but there is it feels kind of like a cameo, but David Bowie is in this movie. And it's sort of a bizarre scene that is edited very bizarrely, but I love it. And it does this is kind of near when we first see Agent Dale Cooper returning, and then David Bowie walks in as Agent Jeffries, who actually is a character that gets much more fleshed out in The Return. David Bowie had unfortunately passed already, but we'll get to that later. They somehow flesh out the character more, even though he had passed. This is at the FBI headquarters. Oh, another reason I wanted to show this is David Lynch acts himself sometimes, and one of those characters is Agent Gordon Cole of the FBI in Twin Peaks, and we will see him here. There's David Bowie.
Philip, is that you? Philip?
And that was David Lynch shouting there.
Cooper?
Oh, okay.
Meet the long-lost Philip Jeffries.
I'm not going to talk about you.
This is actually how it is in the movie. It's weirdly edited. Like,
Found something. Who do you think this is then? What the hell did he say there, Albert? That's Special Agent Dale Cooper. For God's sakes, Jeffries, where the hell have you been? You've been gone down here 2 years. Wow.
It was a dream. We live inside a dream.
And it's raining post toasties.
Helga!
This agent here on the right is sort of like that stereotype I was talking about of this like grumbly, like he's like, I hate this small town kind of thing. It's a very good juxtaposition.
Baby damn no! I found something in Seattle at Judas. And then there they were. And they sat quietly for hours. And I followed.
So the interesting thing about this scene and of everything that Agent Jeffries is saying there is that at the time this came out in 1992, this was all incomprehensible, like nonsense. Like everything he was saying sounded like word salad. And what's interesting is that there seemingly was kind of a plan for this all along. And like in this, David Bowie's character is like talking about Judy, like who's Judy, and that's like a major part of the return. So this is truly like such delayed gratification that we get a lot of this explanation so much later. So
27 years you had to wait for the explanation.
yes, that is correct. But let's go back to the tier list. And I don't know if this would be everyone's choice, but I'm putting Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me in a Dream. I think it's one of my favorite movies of all time. On my letterbox, you can pick like 4 movies in your like favorite movies of all time section. And mine is Midsummer, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, and Fire Walk with Me is what I have as my 4. So that's how much I love this movie. All right. Little more ways to go. So next we got Lost Highway. This has stars Patricia Arquette as kind of 2 characters, Bill Pullman and Balthazar Getty. This is a movie about I mean, it's hard to say what any David Lynch movie is about, really, but there is a couple who at their house, and interestingly enough, I think I later learned that house that it was shot at was actually David Lynch's house. I did just kind of learn that. And I want to confirm that later, but they start receiving videotapes at the door of their house. And they start looking at these videotapes, and they are videotapes of someone recording the outside of their house. It's very creepy and stalkery. And so it almost feels like it's going to be like some kind of thriller that involves that, but it turns out to be a lot more going on. There is switching identities and like supernatural elements, and one major aspect of it I thought I'd bring up that I find it this is just an odd fact about this movie that I noticed when I was watching it. One of the major plot points in this movie is that a man kills his wife and ends up in prison. And the villain of this movie, which is this creepy faced guy over here, went to prison for killing his wife.
Oh, wow.
Which after this movie, he didn't like still have a career.
Yeah. That'll do it. That'll end the career
Yeah.
right there.
But like after learning that, this iconic scene where this villain first shows up becomes so much creepier. And I think that scene is one of the famous parts of this movie, where the villain walks up to Bill Pullman's character and says, I forget what he basically says, like, I'm at your house right now. It's very creepy. Yes, this was near the end of the movies that I watched when I was trying to watch every David Lynch film. It's not one that I particularly heard, like I heard David Lynch fans really liking it, but it's not one that I particularly heard like most people overly praise, but I actually liked it way more than I thought I was going to, which is actually why I'm gonna put it in a classic for weirdos, because it is a movie for weirdos, but I'm gonna put it at the top of that.
Oh, okay.
Above Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart, because I think Lost Highway is excellent. One thing about Lost Highway I noticed, and I saw it so recently that I'm still trying to process a lot of like think about what things mean and stuff, but I've noticed a theme in many of David Lynch's works of fire. Wild at Heart has lots of symbolism of fire Fire, Walk With Me, and Lost Highway as well. There's all of these like visions of fire, and I have to wonder if there's something about cleansing fire or starting anew, or destruction to create destruction as creation. But I should know better than to think of all of that stuff, because well, David Lynch would not ever answer that, and usually people are wrong. He is he is not he typically has not explained things, but when someone will say, "Does this mean this?" he will usually go, "No, that's not even close."
Not even close.
Yes.
That really is the part that stinks.
Yep. So yeah, that's about all I got on Lost Highway. That was 1997. Next we'll go to 1999. And this is this is an interesting part of this
from Disney
retrospective. You noticed exactly the right thing to notice. That's right. David Lynch has a G-rated Disney produced movie called The Straight Story from 1999, starring Richard Farnsworth, Sissy Spacek, and Harry Dean Stanton, who is another frequent collaborator. This is the story based on a real story of a man named Alvin Straight. That's why it's called The Straight Story. It's sort of a double entendre of like, it's the straight story, like the Alvin Straight story, but it's also a straightforward story. And down at the bottom right there is an actual picture of Alvin Straight and his brother. And then above that is Richard Farnsworth playing Alvin Straight, in I believe his last role. The Straight Story, like it's a rated G, like Disney live action movie. So it is a big change of pace from like the horror and the violence and the intensity of a lot of these other movies. This is by far the most accessible because of it being a G-rated, straightforward story. Because this is the story, and this really happened, of Alvin Straight hearing that his brother had a stroke. And his brother was still alive, but he heard that he had a stroke, and he had been estranged from his brother for a long time. And he decided that to sort of make up to him and like to not, hold distance. He wanted to go visit him before he died. But Alvin Straight himself had started to have failing health, and his eyesight wasn't good anymore, so he couldn't get a driver's license. So he decided that what he was going to do, like very stubbornly decided what he was going to do is ride his riding lawnmower all the way from Iowa to Wisconsin. So this is a road trip story about Alvin Straight hopping on his lawnmower and going to Wisconsin to visit his brother. And it's sort of like an Odyssey-like story, a road trip story with meeting characters along the way. One of my favorite types of stories. And it's obviously a really heartfelt, touching story that is about confronting death, confronting growing older. It's interesting. I hear so many people talk about this, and because again, it is a G-rated, family-friendly movie, but a lot of people talk about this like, if someone wants to watch a David Lynch movie and they're worried about it being too upsetting, maybe The Straight Story or The Elephant Man. The Straight Story is a good movie, and it is very heartwarming. But for me personally, I did feel an overwhelming existential dread looming over me the entire time, because this movie is just so much about death. There's a lot of staring at the sky and pondering about the end of life. Like that's worse to me than Eraserhead Baby. Like that's so much scarier to me than a creepy baby, or like a guy who's stalking your house and leaving videotapes there. Like staring at the sky with a longingness for your youth, that's horrifying.
Yeah, you can do your best to avoid the stalker sending videotapes.
Yeah.
One day you are going to look up at the sky and be like, "Oh crap, it's almost all over."
Yeah. And so yeah, and one of the again most beautiful lines, but just to drive this home, is Alvin Straight in the movie says, the worst part about getting older is remembering when he was young. And I'm just like, this is devastating. But it is like overall heartwarming movie where he meets a lot of nice people along the way to get to his brother. So that's the Straight story, showing real versatility as a director. I mean, to be able to do this and like sort of like kind of in the middle, like we're towards the end of the movies, and kind of to do this turn, I'm gonna call this a classic for anyone.
Okay.
Because it's a really good movie. And I do think it is for anyone, despite that sort of like existential dread thing that I was talking about. Could be a me thing, but I'm sure everyone will feel a little bit of that dread going in. But it's overall a very heartwarming and wonderful and beautiful movie. So that brings us into the 21st century, to the year 2001. And this is Mulholland Drive from 2001, starring Naomi Watts, who is another frequent collaborator, but interestingly enough, I feel like mainly starting at this point, which is quite later in, but she did collaborate a few other times. Laura Haring and Justin Theroux. So Mulholland Drive is where we start to see that highly like inspired by Los Angeles and Hollywood, and like sort of this meta concept of like the idea of filmmaking as like a meta narrative in his films. Because yeah, this is a story ostensibly about the character Naomi Watts's character, as well as Laura Haring's character, forming a bond. And it's another neo-noir mystery film, but this one much more of a surrealist film, I think, than the previous ones like Blue Velvet and Lost Highway, even though that one was very surrealist as well. Mulholland Drive is a film where to me it almost feels like there's just generally the mystery is what's going on. Like there's not a murder or anything. Well, there actually is, but it follows several characters, and the main one of the characters is suffering from, so Naomi Watts's character gets to Los Angeles, starting a life there, and Laura Haring's character is suffering from amnesia after a car accident. And then we sort of follow all of these characters on this quest to sort of, particularly Naomi Watts and Laura Haring's character, trying to figure out what happened in her life before that led to her amnesia. And it features a twist worthy of M. Night Shyamalan. And so it is a movie that one would not want to say too much about. That's, I mean, I think that this is a surrealist classic. It features what many people consider this at the bottom right, sort of like in Blue Velvet, how the movie starts with a scene that is seemingly completely unrelated to the rest of the movie. But then when you get to the end of the movie, you realize that that scene is more of like a thematic tie-in, that you're kind of seeing the whole movie and the the points that the movie is trying to make and the symbolism of the movie all in this first scene. And so it's interesting to analyze these first scenes, like in Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive, later with the context of the full movie. This, I'm pretty sure this first scene, there's a clip from it in the bottom right, is I'm pretty sure there's like a YouTube upload that someone called like the scariest scene in all of cinema. Again, this is not like a horror movie per se, but the first scene is truly like insane. It's really horrifying. It features like a jump scare actually, and it's really effective. But again, really the point of it is sort of a more of a thematic and symbolic tie-in. I frequently see this one as very, very high up on like David Lynch ranking lists and ratings. Many people consider this to be his best film. I know that there are many people who consider this to be their favorite film of all time. It is one of his many magnum opuses, which I know is kind of an oxymoron, but it is one of the most perfectly executed examples of this Lynchian surrealism. So probably one of the great surrealist films of our time. It has taken me some time to think about and appreciate more and more over time after I saw it. I am going to put this in a beautiful nightmare. Let's see, where do I put it? Okay, because of the beginning of Twin Peaks season 2, I'm gonna keep Twin Peaks season 2 higher, but Mulholland Drive is gonna go at the bottom of the beautiful nightmare tier. And then we will move on to, we are at David Lynch's final film. Technically, I mean, this is 2006. He had not directed a movie since then, but he did other stuff. So this is his final film. It was in 2006, starring Laura Dern, Jeremy Irons, Justin Theroux. But it's really, really focused on Laura Dern's character. It is a full character piece on specifically this character. And this is a weird comparison to make because this movie that I thought it reminded me of kind of is so recent. And it's sort of like clearly this movie was maybe inspired by this movie, not the other way around. But I just happened to see Beau is Afraid first. And so it kind of made me think like, oh, that movie has some sort of Lynchy aspects. And like the fact that both are 3-hour movies that are just about a specific character, the narrative doesn't have like a linear narrative plot that makes sense on its own, but you're sort of seeing glimpses into this person's life in these different little vignettes. I mentioned earlier that the first and last films that he did were the weirdest, with Eraserhead. Inland Empire is the other one. I mean, this thing truly just abandoning all respectable forms of cinematic storytelling and creating the most nightmarishly unhinged and divorced from the comfort of narrative thing that I've ever seen. Just truly an unbelievable work of art. I mean, this thing was made by David Lynch in 2006, I assume year or two before, over the course of some time between Mulholland Drive and this. It's just like Laura Dern and David Lynch wandering around Los Angeles with a digital camera. This entire thing was filmed by David Lynch on a digital camera. This is truly like David Lynch going back to the roots that many like of us like interested in film, just like trying to film our own stuff on our little digital cameras. This movie, by most modern cinematic standards, looks like absolute garbage. I mean, it is on a the entire thing is on a crappy digital camera. But I mean,
in 2006.
Yes, exactly. And but I think that's something beautiful, is that it, like, David Lynch cares above all else of depicting the themes and symbolism and the surrealist visions, not so much in like doing that via the greatest visuals ever. Like that part doesn't matter as much. It's just like what's gonna make it easier to tell this incredibly hard to tell story. Can I even call it a story? And I think he decided that to make his vision of Inland Empire happen, he had to just literally take it into his own hands. But it's another sort of meta narrative about the making of movies, and Laura Dern getting her first big role in somewhere in Los Angeles, and kind of dealing with the thing I think about this movie that another movie that grew on me more and more the more I thought about it, because after you first watch it, you're just like, what was that? And then the more I think about it afterwards, it starts to really speak to me. And I think the thing that's very interesting about this is, well, I think that a lot of people may be disappointed in a movie if something wasn't explained to them, or they feel like maybe the movie did something wrong because it was supposed to, like there is kind of a sentiment of like, if I didn't understand this through just watching the movie and I had to like think about it after or read about it, then it wasn't good because it didn't communicate that to me. And while I do think that probably most movies should use that rule of explaining it very plainly, because this type of storytelling of an Inland Empire isn't for everyone, I do want to, like, in my opinion, like, it just, art like this is another way to do art where uh like encouraging the audience to try and find their meaning in it, rather than just laying it out for them, is a perfectly valid and good way to do art, and it can even be more impactful. But even though we saw that Mel Brooks clip of him saying that that the symbolism was clear, uh, and so I think that in many, and I think it's okay to do sort of an umbrella thing about his whole career a little bit now, since this is his last movie. But I think one thing that we see in all of David Lynch's works, that he does so beautifully, is that the communication, the goal is not necessarily to tell a narrative or a story. It is to give the audience a feeling, like in his surrealist paintings, and have things feel emotionally true to a situation. In Inland Empire, the tagline is "A woman in trouble," and it's sort of like that's all you need to know. Laura Dern's character appears to be in trouble. She appears to be distressed. She's navigating Hollywood. And while it's almost impossible to explain like what literally happens in the movie, like, is it a dream? Is this part real, but this part's a dream? Is this part real, but then this part is her visualization of like, you'd get caught in the weeds of like trying to explain like moment to moment what is happening. And the truth is, like, this is a surrealist painting made into a movie. It doesn't matter what's happening. If you're to look at a surrealist painting and see like a black smudge, you're not gonna, you like, the question, what is that black smudge, is a stupid question. Like, you're just supposed to look at the black smudge and feel something. It doesn't matter what the black smudge is. So what literally is happening in this movie, in my opinion, does not matter, because the movie is about a woman starting out in Hollywood. And even though you might not be able to explain what is happening in this movie, you can understand how it would feel emotionally and to be a woman in Hollywood. That's probably horrific. That's
Yeah.
probably really difficult. And so this movie feels like it's an emotional truth about what that's like. And all of the strangeness of cinema, another just meta narrative about that. And so that is why I am going to also put Inland Empire in A Beautiful Nightmare. And I might even honestly, this is technically a hot take here that I'm doing here, but I'm gonna put it there. In A Beautiful Nightmare. Many of these things are beautiful nightmares, as you'll see. So, I forgot to check in a while. I guess I didn't have clips for a few of these. We'll just move on then to. So, in 2016, I just thought I'd shout this out. Not a ton to say about it, but there is a documentary about David Lynch, essentially. Not so much about like his movies or explaining anything like that. It's David Lynch, The Art Life from 2016. Directed by John Wynne. And this is a pretty cool, intimate, like it's a series of interviews with David Lynch and just him talking about his thoughts about art, the art process, and a lot to do with like his painting and stuff, and just the way he looks at art, which is of course very unique and interesting. And he also has a book called Room to Dream, which is a good read as well. So I just thought before getting to the final big thing, I thought I'd shout those out. Because really for anyone who appreciates art, I think that The Art Life is a good documentary.
You know, for someone who did painting, it's almost a shame he never did anything, at least once, with animation.
Yeah, some of his short films could almost be considered that, but yeah, it really feels like it would have been great if he had like directed an animated movie or directed like a stop motion could have worked, like something like that could have definitely worked. So, David Lynch's last big project is Twin Peaks: The Return. Which came out in 2017. Him and Mark Frost collaborating again on the world of Twin Peaks. Kyle MacLachlan is back. David Lynch is back as himself as Gordon Cole. Laura Dern enters the world of Twin Peaks as a character. And some of the Bookhouse boys, the people who work at the sheriff's office are there as well. Unfortunately, Sheriff Harry Truman could not be a part of this, which is unfortunate because he's a more major character. But they did sort of have a character that like took his place in the movie, like he's the new sheriff. And then I also like that they gave Michael Horse's character of Hawk somewhat of a bigger role in The Return. I liked that a lot. So The Return is literally 25 years later in Twin Peaks. The really wild thing is that there is a scene in, I believe, Twin Peaks season 2 or something, where in the Red Room, Agent Dale Cooper has a vision. You know what? It's in the finale. It's in the season 2 finale that Laura Palmer in the Red Room in this vision says, I'll see you in 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Like literally in 1991 in the season 2 finale. So usually my philosophy on most things like this is most things are not that thought out or that intentional. I don't think they thought in 25 years we're going to make season 3. I don't think that could have possibly been the case. But I do wonder if they thought like, 25 years is coming up. And we said 25 years, like retroactively, that could have been an inspiration for why they chose to return. And I feel like this was kind of at the early end of reboots becoming super popular. Like I don't feel like it was a total like we did have the Arrested Development reboot that might have really kicked it off, but I feel like this was before like the absolute sea of reboots.
Yeah.
So in The Return, we're back to Twin Peaks, and this season 3 has, I would say, a lot to do with the inherent creepiness of doppelgangers and someone having your identity, because there's someone out there in this world in season 3 who looks exactly like Dale Cooper, but he's not behaving like Dale Cooper. In fact, he's behaving kind of villainous. And this is another so like obviously, like I mentioned with Fire Walk With Me that David Lynch is gonna do what he wants, and he's gonna he's not interested in just fan service or like making this new season 3 feel like Twin Peaks. He's gonna do the story he wants to tell. And the result is truly an entirely different vibe than seasons 1 or 2 of Twin Peaks. Probably closer to the vibe of Fire Walk With Me, which again I mentioned when that came out, people were disappointed because the vibe wasn't the same. I'm surprised actually that this season 3, The Return, is very highly praised. There are many people who consider this to be the best thing that David Lynch has ever done. And that's surprising because the tone is completely different. It's a darker tone. There are some moments that capture that more lighthearted feeling of some of Twin Peaks, but it is quite dark. And it not to use the word magnum opus a lot. I said it was an oxymoron to use it so much, but like it has the like just the massiveness that one would imagine of a magnum opus, because The Return, in a way, more than being season 3 of Twin Peaks, is kind of an 18-hour movie. Like, yes, it's split into 18 parts of like about an hour each, but it isn't very, self-contained episode to episode.
So it had 18 episodes that whole season?
Yes. And but the pacing of it and the pacing and editing of it, once you kind of realize, once you kind of hear that, I do think David Lynch kind of thought of this as a movie in a way. Like, it's one big project. Like, this is The Return, this is Twin Peaks, not as like thinking of it like this is this episode and this is this episode, but as this one big piece. Once you realize that that's the way he thought of it and conceived it and like made it, you start to realize that the editing and pacing of it does seem kind of like an 18-hour movie. Which is brilliant. It's a very unique thing in its aspect. And truly, like, it's 18 hours to it does kind of as much as you could explain anything, it really does, like, as far as closing the loop on the themes of Twin Peaks and like closing the loop on maybe the goals of what Twin Peaks was trying to set out to do. In that sense, it's like complete and explained, even if some of the surrealism and symbolic nature of it means that it will never be explained. But Twin Peaks: The Return is fantastic. I have one more clip, and that's a lie. I have a couple others, but for The Return, I have a clip, and it's maybe somewhat of a non sequitur in the scheme of things, but the reason why I wanted to play this clip is because David Lynch is, of course, he plays Gordon Cole. He's actually quite like the character of Gordon Cole becomes a quite bigger character in The Return. So David Lynch is actually in this as an actor quite a bit. And A lot of people have found a lot of comfort in this line as one of their favorite lines of the show. And I mean, I guess you'll see why, that there are marginalized communities that find this to be a very comforting line, and it's quite cool that David Lynch is saying it and he wrote it. This is a scene where to solve one of the core mysteries of the show, an FBI, the director of the FBI, that's an ing, the director of the FBI is played by David Lynch, the director. Kind of interesting. So the director of the FBI, Gordon Cole, goes to meet another FBI agent who actually is in season 2 of Twin Peaks, Denise. And they have a conversation because Gordon Cole is seeking some help from her. And I don't know if it mentions in there, so I guess for context I will mention that Denise, the agent of Denise, is a trans woman, and in season 2 in 1991, that's quite shocking that there was a trans woman on well, a trans character on TV. And even in season 2, I won't lie, can be a little clunky, but it's actually kind of shockingly open-minded for 1991, because like people just treat her with respect and refer to her as a woman in it. Like,
Yeah.
So it's kind of shocking for 1991. And so, I mean, to some extent, like David Lynch and Mark Frost, credit where credit is due there. And amazing that they brought Denise back for this scene.
Before you were Denise, when you were Dennis, and I was your boss, when I had you working undercover at the DEA, you were a confused and wild thing sometimes. I had enough dirt on you to fill the Grand Canyon, and I never used a spoonful because you were and are a great agent. And when you became Denise, I told all your colleagues, those clown comics, to fix their hearts or die.
Yes, and as I've said many times before, Gordon, I can never repay you enough for that kindness.
So yes, fix your hearts or die. It's a wonderful line. But just one snippet of the incredible 18-hour return. If anyone ever gets there and watches it, I want to warn you that it is the most delayed gratification thing of all time, not just in the 25 years, but they make you really, 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 really wait for something else to happen as well.
Oh, okay.
In fact, when I was first watching it, I was getting frustrated by it because I was just like, there's one thing that we were all waiting for, and they're purposefully like shoving your face in the dirt, going, "You're not getting it yet, haha." But yeah, with the perspective of looking back on it, it's like, okay, that was the right thing to do, and I see the story that you're telling by doing that. And so, Twin Peaks: The Return is going in a dream as well.
Wow, the top one is all Twin Peaks.
Yes, it is all Twin Peaks. Because I mean, that's just how I feel. It's all Twin Peaks to me. So I know this has been going on a while, but hey, this is important to me. But we are in the final slide of this presentation where I will conclude this episode. So, final output. In the years since The Return in 2017, which I believe did come out week to week. I was following it at the time. First thing I do want to show, David Lynch brought back a beloved series known as his Weather Reports, where he would simply post like a vlog of him talking about the weather to start his day. And these are just some of the most endearing things here. I referenced this at the beginning of the episode. You'll see this now.
Good morning. It's August 21, 2020, and once again, it's a Friday. Here in LA, some low clouds and fog, clearing a little bit now. Very still, around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius. I'm wearing dark glasses today because I'm seeing the future and it's looking very bright. should go up to around 90 degrees this afternoon, around 32 degrees Celsius. And we might be having some clouds with us, but hopefully also some blue skies and golden sunshine. Everyone, have a great day.
So that's him saying the future is bright. Um, yes. So this has been a retrospective on the life and works of David Lynch, one of the great American surrealists in cinema. Of course, we all wish that there could have been more. He had been working on a series called Wisteria, which was going to be produced by Netflix, but then like Netflix abandoned it. So we might have had that by now if that didn't happen. I believe it had been shooting. We might never see that. There was also something.
Oh, so it is shot?
I don't know that the whole thing is shot, but it was. I thought that it was shooting, and then there's a Wikipedia page for David Lynch's unrealized projects. Oh, interesting. He was going to adapt Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis into a feature film in the 80s, but that never happened. That seems very fitting. I would have loved to see that. The Metamorphosis is like feels like almost David Lynch type of a thing. Maybe Wisteria might be the same thing as Unrecorded Night. So I had written down that he was working on a project called Wisteria and on a project called Unrecorded Night. I think it might be the same thing. It was going to be a non-Twin Peaks series that was going to shoot at Netflix, but was canceled when the pandemic hit. So that's unfortunately, yeah, that
I
is
just noticed because I did look up the unrealized projects list.
Yeah.
Did you see Dune 2?
Oh, really? That yeah, I'm not surprised that didn't get picked up, but
we dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
Again, it's not David's fault.
Yeah.
It's Frank's.
Yeah, not at all his fault. But yeah, he was also apparently something called Antelope Don't Run No More and Snoot World. So lots of things he was working on. He at some point last year announced that he had some time ago been diagnosed with emphysema from years of smoking. And that he was basically forced to only direct remotely from then on. That's obviously not a good point of health to be in, to have emphysema. And unfortunately, not too long after that, in this January, there were the horrid California wildfires that made the air toxic. And I think it's basically confirmed that the conditions caused a rapid decline in health. So, but he lived to 78, and we got to see all the works that I covered today. A career that has made him my favorite director of all time and many people's favorite directors of all time. And I think it's one of those things where, and because I'm going to close it out after this, I want to say, like, obviously, like, he lived to 78. That's a wonderful long life. I hope was happy towards the end and had family with him and was working on art and stuff. And so it's sort of one of those things that, like, it's sad, but he lived a long, good, successful life with lots of incredible works. But to end it out, I wanted to end it with one final clip from him that is a lot of people's favorite clips of his. That's very funny and endearing. But the reason why I want to end it on that clip is because I think a sort of surrealist, sort of untraditional, very artsy, experimental type of artist like this is always going to be something that's like not for everyone. But I find that things that are not for everyone can often be the best things because they are the best for the people it's for. So it's sort of like when something is more niche, then it speaks to a particular person more strongly. And I think that's the case with me in many of his works, where it's like, this speaks to a part of my brain that other things just don't. where it's just capturing something that other movies and TV shows just don't, because many things are trying to appeal to as many people as possible, and by appealing to fewer, it is even more amazing. And obviously it's not that few, because he was very successful and many people love David Lynch's work, but I think it's an amazing towing of that line between surrealism and experimentalism and sort of the avant-garde to the almost most appeal that something like that has ever gotten. Like, he's almost like the most popular, extremely experimental surrealist artist of this time. Because most things this experimental and surreal don't get this popular. So that's a testament to his work, that he was able to so effectively and clearly do the symbolism and make things that work on multiple levels. And people for ages and ages will be trying to figure out the meaning of his work. But whether he is here with us or not, and unfortunately he has left us, but whether he is here with us or not, explaining it is not something that he was interested in doing. That is for us to determine, and we will always have his works to look at and think for ourselves about. And so I'm going to leave us with this, one of my favorite David Lynch clips of him being interviewed by an interviewer who really wanted to have him elaborate and know more, what like an interviewer is supposed to do. You dig, you try and learn something about the work from the director. And I want to leave everyone with the comment that refuse to elaborate, refuse to explain yourself, just make amazing art, and you don't need to explain yourself. Just be like David Lynch right here.
Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
Elaborate on that.
No, I won't. No one sees it.